So in episode 2 of Perry Mason, we see that he's continuing to investigate the murdering of that child. We get a backstory about Perry Mason when he was in the war. Mrs. and Mr. Dobkins has been keeping secrets, and we meet Sister Allison. We're going to talk about that and much more. Following one of her trademark burning sermons, Evangelical preacher Sister Alice offers the Dobkins the church's full moral and financial support, much to her mother Birdy's dismay. During a routine domestic intervention, B-Cop Paul Drake is rerouted to a gruesome crime scene where he finds a compelling trail of evidence. Mason is left incensed by jaw-dropping admission from Baggerly, and after pressing Emily on her husband's alibi, finds himself confronted by an outraged Della. Detectives Holcomb and Ennis use Drake's findings to their own advantage. Hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with my Chapter 2, Episode 2 review of HBO's Perry Mason. Very excited to let you all know what I thought about this episode compared to last week, and let you know some of the pros and cons of this episode here in this spoiler discussion / review. So this is a full spoiler video here, so if you haven't seen the latest episode of Perry Mason, check it out, come back, and let's have some discussions. But if you've seen it, you're in the right place. But before we dive into this discussion, as you can see on the screen now, make sure you follow me on all my social media accounts. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my new content. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up, helps out the channel tremendously, but I also really appreciate it. And last but not least, if and when you've seen this new chapter of Perry Mason, let me know what you all thought about this episode. Did you enjoy this one more than last week? Did you enjoy last week more than this week? Some of your favorite moments. Let's have some fun discussions about Chapter 2 in the comments below. So if you guys watched my review last week, I was kind of lukewarm on the premiere episode. I liked the atmosphere and the noir aspect, the mystery aspect about who killed the kid. But I wasn't really gravitating towards our main character, Perry, some of the other amazing actors in the show. It was just kind of didn't hit me on a lot of levels, but there was enough there for me to watch this next episode as I did, this Sunday night. So the episode was solid. I would definitely say I was more entertained and more intrigued about this episode than I was the premiere episode. I think that goes into account, plays into a factor that there was more character development. There was introductions of Sister Alice and Paul Drake. We also learned more about the Dobkins family in regards to some lies and some things that they didn't tell us in the first episode. We get a really gruesome kind of practical effect of someone shooting themselves in the head. And then visually speaking, we also get the stuff with Perry in the war. So this episode definitely kind of intrigued me a lot more than the premiere. I was more invested into the storytelling. So we're going to break it all down here again, full spoilers. So as we kind of kick off the episode, like I said, we kick it off with Perry in the war. And that stuff, man, those scenes that we got like 3 or 4 scenes that was intertwined through the episode, but it kicked off with him in the war, and those visuals were pretty impressive. As I had mentioned last week with some of my positives with the premiere episode was the effects of the show, the set design, the costume design, the atmosphere is just so well done in the show. And then everything that we saw with Perry in the war was just like, again, very compelling. It was just visually compelling. And I felt the intensity. I felt something for the character because, again, Matthew as an actor is an incredible actor. And Perry Mason so far in the first episode and this episode has been an okay character, not as intriguing as some of the supporting characters, but those moments to me were really key, and we'll talk about more of that war stuff, but that stuff was really interesting to me. With the war, we found out that he was discharged due to some maybe being in a relationship with someone in the army, so we'll find out more about that, but all that war stuff was really interesting. So like I said up top, we did meet some new interesting characters, some new characters from Sister Alice and Paul Drake. Paul Drake played by Chris Schalk. It looks like he's going to be playing a pivotal role in this season, maybe finding out some stuff about the cops and what they did last week with killing those guys in that room, in that apartment. And we also have Sister Alice, who's played by Tatiana Maslany, who I'm not too familiar with her work on Black Orphan, but I've seen her in some other things, and she's a great actress, and I was really excited to see what she brings to the table and see what her character brings. And Sister Alice has some interesting moments. I wouldn't say they're necessarily good moments or bad moments, but interesting to say the least. We get all that, but the biggest thing with this episode was definitely figuring out more about the Dobkins family, Matthew and Emily. It seems like they've been lying to us this at least the first 2 episodes. We find out that Matthew was not at work, that he is a gambler, and the police are thinking, which I don't think this is the case, but the police so far thinks that he has something to do with the kidnapping of his younger son, Charlie, which that may be the case, but I don't think he had any part of the son dying, but we'll see how all that plays out. So far, I think that he's innocent on the kidnapping and also the murdering, but we'll see what comes of that. But then we also find out that Emily's been lying about, she wasn't asleep when her son Charlie went missing and got kidnapped. She was on the phone, and she might have been on the phone with her secret lover, George, who blew his brains out in this episode, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But that visual was pretty impressive in regards to the practical effects of that. But we find out about that. So Matthew's a gambler and Emily's a cheater. And did they kidnap their son? Did they have anything to do with it? Let me know what you all thought about that. But I thought that was pretty fascinating. We also find out that, Matthew's character is the son of Herman Baggerly, played by Robert Patrick. So that was something that we also found out. So very interesting stuff going on now with people lying and reveals being given to us. So again, this episode was a little bit more, like I said, intriguing for me, more interesting than the first episode. So we get all that stuff that happens pretty early on within the first 10 to 15 minutes. We also meet, like I said, Officer Paul Drake, played by Chris Clark, Chris Schock, who I was very intrigued about his whole scenario with him being a black cop with primarily white officers, detectives, and seeing how that kind of plays out. We saw that he took a domestic call, and we saw how all that played out. But more importantly, we saw that he found the bodies of those guys that was killed by the police officer last week, and it seems like that might be his main storyline throughout the season, that he's going to probably find some evidence that the cops had something to do with those guys that we saw, be brutally killed last week by that one police officer. So I wonder how that's going to play out, how that's going to shake down, because obviously him being black is going to play a big part in this season, and people believe in his word, and him, potentially telling them that, hey, detectives in this police force are dirty cops and taking money and killing people. So that'll be a really interesting story. And I thought that the little bit of scenes that we saw from Chris in this episode, playing Paul Drake, was really interesting. I'm again, all of these supporting characters so far, from Sister Alice so far, and the Dobkins family, and some of the other supporting characters, like I said, Paul Drake. I'm just more intrigued with their stories, more so than I am with Perry Mason so far. But hopefully that changes. Again, I like Perry so far, but he's just not. He's the lead of the show, and I'm just not there yet for the character. But we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But in the meantime, we see Perry is continuing to do his investigation. He comes across, again, like I said, we found out that Emily was having an affair with this character named George, which I'm not sure if we met George in episode 1. Let me know in the comments if I missed that. But George blew his brains out, and he left some notes that Emily had wrote him showing that they had an affair. But Perry thought that was maybe an inkling of them kidnapping the child, and he just couldn't live with that, because the note said that he couldn't live with what he did, and that he, hopes that God forgives him for his sins. So Perry took that as like, okay, maybe he kidnapped the child and killed himself due to that. But as Della Street says, that she thinks that it was just a matter of the letter saying that they were in an affair, and they're obviously involved in the church, and that's a sin, obviously, having an affair. So very interesting scene there. But really the most impressive thing with that scene, we get some levity, some jokes from Perry Mason, which let me know if the jokes are working for you guys. If it feels like to me like the jokes just aren't working for me, they just seem out of place, and just the levity of it all just hasn't, the tones of the show just isn't consistent for me enough. It's just like, okay, the murder mystery, the comedy, being in the 30s, it's just a weird mixture of tones and stuff like that. It just isn't completely working for me. But either way, within that scene, we see the George's head like that. I'm a big fan of practical effects, and I was pretty impressed by that. And again, I was impressed by that as well as that war stuff. So kudos to the production team so far in the first 2 episodes. So we get all that information regarding George, and he goes to Emily and confronts her about lying and all that stuff. We see Della Street is definitely on Emily's side. She doesn't believe that she had anything to do with the murder, but I don't know. Like I said, these Dobkin kids have been lying so far. So let me know if you guys think, I don't think they killed Charlie, but I think one of them, if not both of them, had something to do with maybe the kidnapping. Let me know if you guys think it's Emily, if it's Matthew, both, or neither one of them. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But again, one of the more interesting scenes was, Sister Alice, again, being played by a phenomenal actress. But Sister Alice, I don't know what the show's getting at with this whole, like, when she's closing her eyes and she hears the baby screaming, and when she touched Emily's hand, she had like some kind of spider sense and felt something that maybe was off about Emily. Maybe she knew that she was having an affair or whatever the case may be. But let me know what you guys think about Sister Alice, and if you're excited to see more of that character and what she has to offer to the show, because I don't know if she's going to be involved in some of this mishappening, the child going missing, maybe some other things in the city. She did call out the cops in the middle of her sermon, which I thought was interesting. But let me know what you all think about Sister Alice and what kind of role she's going to play in this season. So we see all that kind of play out. We get EB trying to, figure out how to get both Matthew as well as Emily out of prison. We see there again the comedy kind of mixed in within the show. But like I said, the biggest things for me, compelling wise and just visually speaking, was the stuff in the war. The most compelling stuff that we've gotten so far, in my opinion, from Mason Perry, was seeing him at the war and seeing him kill his fallen soldiers. They were wounded, they were dying, and he showed them mercy. I thought that was really the most interesting thing we've gotten so far from the character, and I'm really interested to see if we get more of those intercuts of him being in the war and the decisions he's made and what relationship, if any, that he had with someone else in the war. So the war stuff is the most compelling stuff for me personally. With Perry, we still haven't met his daughter. We'll see what goes on with that and how he met his, if it was his wife or just a one-night stand. We'll see what goes on with that. But again, the character just isn't catching my attention. It's everyone else so far. Again, I'm a little bit more interested in Sister Alice. I'm more interested in Paul Drake and, some of the other surrounding characters versus our main character, Perry. So hopefully next week we get some more from the character. We learn more about his war stories, his daughter, his ex-wife, or, the mother of his child, and figure out what's going on with the Dobkins. See if Emily or Matthew had anything to do with the case. Or the murder of their child, or the kidnapping at least. So let me know what you all thought about Chapter 2. If you are invested in the story, if you're liking where the things are headed, what do you hope to see next week? And let me know your pros and cons about the first 2 episodes so far. So I'll be back next week reviewing episode 3. I'm a person that always sticks by my 3-episode rule. If you haven't caught my interest by episode 3, I'm out of there. So 2 episodes so far, they're okay. They're not terrible. They're not bad. They're not great. They're just kind of mediocre so far. So we'll see what happens next week. But let me know what you all thought of this episode. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss any of my content. Make sure you check out my reviews and videos I did over this weekend. From my Ask Me Anything Q&A on Saturday. It was 2 hours of just great fun, great questions that you guys sent me over. I did my review for Dark Season 3, so check that out. And then this week, I got a lot of cool things for you all. So make sure you keep an eye on that community tab. You hit that notification bell so you know what's coming this week. So thank you all for watching this review, and we'll see you soon.